January 5th, 1989. A group of boys were seen dumping a barrel into an open field. But this wasn't just any ordinary drum. Inside it was the body of an innocent girl. A girl who had lived through 44 days of pure hell.
前代未聞の
Junko Furuta was just a normal teenage girl. In fact, she was more than that. She was bright, hardworking, and had her entire future carefully planned out. Born in Misato, Saitama Prefecture, she lived with her parents and two brothers. People who knew her described her as cheerful, disciplined, and polite. She didn't smoke, she didn't drink, and she definitely wasn't into drugs, which to the delinquent crowd around her school made her seem boring. But the truth was, Junko had her priorities straight. She was a good student at Yashio Minami High School, popular among her classmates, and hardly ever missed a day of school. After classes, she worked part-time at a plastic molding factory, carefully saving money for a graduation trip she was excited about. She had already secured a job at an electronics company after graduation, and it looked like everything in her life was falling into place. Junko wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was attractive, well-liked, and ambitious. A girl with dreams, a future, and a family who loved her. And maybe that's what makes this case so haunting, because when you hear what happened next, you realize just how much was stolen from her. Hiroshi Miyano, a school bully with dangerous connections. Unlike other kids who just pretended to be tough, Hiroshi actually had ties to the Yakuza, Japan's organized crime syndicate. That made him feared and almost untouchable. He went to the same school as Junko, and at some point, he developed a crush on her, but when he asked her out, she turned him down. For Hiroshi, that rejection wasn't just embarrassing, it was unforgivable. On November 25th, 1988, Junko was riding her bike home from work when one of Hiroshi's friends ambushed her, knocking her to the ground. And right on cue, Hiroshi showed up, pretending to be her savior, chasing the attacker away. Grateful, but completely unaware of his real intentions, Junko agreed to let him walk her home. But instead of taking her home, Hiroshi led her to an abandoned warehouse, and that's where he finally revealed who he really was, not a rescuer, but a predator. In that abandoned house, Hiroshi sexually assaulted her, again and again. Then, he took her to a hotel where he called his friends, Joe Ogura and Yasushi Watanabe. There, these monsters took turns with her. They decided not to let Junko go because they were having too much fun, and they feared she might call the police and expose everything. So the next morning, Hiroshi took Junko to a nearby park where two boys were waiting, along with a third, Nobuhara Minato. They discovered Junko's real address and threatened to kill her family if she ever tried to escape. After that, they took her to Minato's parents' house, and this is where they imprisoned her for the next 42 days of pure hell. Junko's parents had been desperately searching for her with the help of the police, but these boys, they knew this would happen. So they forced Junko to call her parents and tell them she had run away and was staying safely with a friend. They even made her say, "Please stop the investigation." At first, they kept Junko at the house, pretending she was his girlfriend. But soon, the parents realized it was all a lie. They used Junko like a toy, beating her ruthlessly and raping her countless times a day. And it didn't stop there. They would brag to their friends about what they were doing, as if it was something to be proud of. They even invited others to join in, including members of the Yakuza gang. Only within the first few days, Junko was raped by more than 30 people. By this day, humanity was already lost. She was forced to stay naked all the time and was constantly beaten. Not just that. They would lock her inside a freezer for hours and only take her out when they wanted to assault her again. Minato's parents lived in the same house, but they were too afraid to do anything. They had seen their son's violent nature and knew about his ties with the Yakuza, but that was just a small reason. The more disgusting truth is that they stayed silent because they were more worried about losing their good reputation in the community. This is so fucked up on so many levels. After 10 days, Junko's body had already begun to fail under the endless torture. Her body was so damaged that blood had accumulated in her sinuses, making it impossible for her to breathe. Her digestive system was destroyed. It could no longer accept food or water. Every time she tried to eat, there was constant vomiting, and this only made those devils angrier. They would beat her even more, as if her suffering wasn't enough. At night, they would force her to sleep on the balcony in freezing cold temperatures as a form of punishment. They were so inhumane that they specifically targeted her legs to make sure she could never run away. She was left with severe muscle damage. Her hands were shattered. She could no longer even grip anything. They had smashed her hands with a dumbbell until her bones were crushed and her fingernails completely destroyed. Now, you may be wondering, did she ever try to escape? Did she ever call for help? Well, she actually did. One day, the boys had drunk too much and eventually fell asleep. Junko saw her only chance. She quietly went downstairs, reached for the phone, and began to call the police. The line connected, an officer picked up, and she begged for help. But fear struck her. She thought someone might come from behind, so she ran out of the house. Sadly, she was caught by one of the boys who had gone out. Meanwhile, Hiroshi called the police back and told them it was just a prank call. Then, he dragged Junko back to the bedroom. She was terrified because she knew what was coming next, and she was right. They poured lighter fluid on her leg and set it on fire so she could never run again. Somehow, she survived. At this point, she was begging them to kill her, but they didn't stop there. They found new ways to torture her. They would hold her head against concrete and jump on it. After so much pain and damage, she was no longer able to urinate properly. She had suffered severe damage to her genitals. They were burned with cigarettes, scorched with a lighter, and they even inserted various objects and fireworks into her genitals, mouth, and ears. The damage was so horrific that she was nearly deaf. At this point, she could barely move. At best, she could crawl. It took her over an hour just to crawl to the bathroom. Her appearance had completely changed. No one could even recognize her anymore. And because of that, those monsters no longer found her attractive, so they moved on to rape other girls. During these 44 days of hell, Junko went through things far worse than what I've told you so far. There are some things I can't even say out loud because they are just too gruesome. So the next part will include those details. If you wish to read them, you can pause and read. But if you can't handle it, please skip to the next part, because what comes next is beyond anything human. After all that damage, she no longer looked human. Her body was unrecognizable, her skin pale, bruised, and torn. She smelled like she was already rotting. Blood continuously poured from her genitals, the result of unending abuse. Every moment she spent was spent begging to be killed. Then came the fateful day. The boys challenged her to a game of mahjong solitaire and forced her to play. And somehow, even in that broken state, Junko won the game. This infuriated them. They beat her ruthlessly, punching, kicking, smashing her from every side. They even threw a dumbbell on her stomach. After nearly 2 hours of pure torture, Junko's body went into complete shock. And finally, she died. The boys panicked. They rushed to check on her and found her motionless. Out of fear of being caught, they made a plan. They stuffed her body into a 55-gallon oil drum and filled it with concrete. But because of their negligence, they didn't notice that Junko's hair was still sticking out of the concrete. They later disposed of the barrel at a construction site in Koto, Tokyo. There was a good chance that the police would have never found out who did this. But luckily, Hiroshi was a complete fool. 2 weeks later, while being questioned by police about a recent sexual assault case of another 19-year-old girl, he got confused. He thought the officers were talking about Junko. Both crimes were so similar that he assumed one of the other boys had already confessed. In his stupidity, he told them everything. By the time he realized his mistake, it was already too late. He revealed the location where they had hidden Junko's body. Soon after, all 4 boys were arrested. A few days later, the oil drum was opened. The concrete was broken apart. and inside, they found Junko's body in a condition so horrific it was beyond imagination. Later, Junko's family was informed of what had happened to her and the details of her torture. When her mother heard what they had done to her daughter, she fainted instantly and was later admitted to a psychiatric hospital where she stayed for a long time. The autopsy of Junko revealed something truly horrifying. Small glass bottles were still stuck inside her rectal cavity, and even worse, it was discovered that she was pregnant. Her face was so completely mutilated that she could only be identified through her fingerprints. Now, understand this. Even though these monsters committed one of the most heinous crimes in history, the court still viewed them as juveniles because they were all under the age of 18. Because of that, their names were kept secret, but journalists refused to stay silent. They uncovered their identities and published their names, stating that these boys were so inhumane, they no longer deserved human rights. At that time, Hiroshi Miyano was 18, Joe Ogura was also 18, Minato was 16, and Yasushi Watanabe was 17. All four were caught and sent to trial. During the trial, it is said that many people fainted upon hearing the details of the case. Even after everything, the boys showed no remorse, no guilt, and despite all of this, they received extremely light sentences for such a horrific crime because they were treated as juveniles. After massive public backlash, their status was upgraded to adult, but even after being tried as adults, their sentences were still shockingly light. Hiroshi received 20 years, Minato got 7 years, Watanabe got 9 years, and Joe Ogura got 8 years in prison. They received such light sentences because they were not charged with murder. Instead, they were charged with causing bodily injury resulting in death. This simply means they did not intend to kill her, but she died by mistake. Another reason for the leniency is that Japan believes in rehabilitation, trying to change the person rather than punish them severely. I know, it sounds weird, but this is the harsh truth. And by the time you're watching this video, every one of them is out of prison. And I bet you must be wondering, what are they doing now after being released? So let's look at them one by one. Nobuharu Minato. After getting out of jail, he changed his name to Shinji Minato, and you'll be shocked to know that in 2006 he actually got married to a woman from Romania and even had a daughter together. But soon after, they got divorced, and then he was arrested again, this time for attempted murder of a businessman, all over a small argument. Minato punched him in the face, then beat him with a baton, and when the man tried to get back into his car, Minato slashed his neck with a knife. Fortunately, the police were nearby when it happened, and he was arrested on the spot. Joe Ogura changed his name to Joe Komasaku. After his release, his father vowed to give his entire life savings to Junko's family out of shame for what his son had done. But Joe took all the money for himself. He used it to live a lavish lifestyle, showing no sign of remorse, and his mother wasn't any better. She actually vandalized Junko's grave, saying Junko was the one who ruined her son's life. Later, Joe married a Chinese woman, but that didn't last long. After their breakup, he started dating another woman, and once again, he ended up in jail, this time for 7 years after beating a man he thought was flirting with his girlfriend. Now, the main culprit, Hiroshi Miyano, who changed his name to Hiroshi Okiyama. After getting out, he went straight back to his gang activities. He was later arrested for fraud, but somehow didn't serve any jail time. As of now, it seems he's living a fairly normal life. He regularly trains at a local kickboxing gym and appears to be just another ordinary man. And lastly, Yasushi Watanabe. He didn't change his name, and there's very little information about him. He was never arrested again, and many believe he now lives in complete isolation, far away from people and far away from his past. So, this is the end of the case. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any good ending. She suffered, she died, and those monsters went on to live normal lives again. Sometimes, I really wonder what Junko's dreams were. How hard it must have been, living through hell every single day, without any hope, just waiting to die. Never, in anyone's life, should a person face something like this. Just because of some monster's lust, her entire life was ruined. I truly hope she finally found peace in heaven. I'm sorry, this world was cruel to you. Making this video was really tough. Even while researching and editing, it felt very emotional. knowing what actually happened to her. I tried my very best to present this story in the most respectful and impactful way possible, and I truly hope you loved it. If you want to support me in reaching my goal of 1,000 subscribers, then please be a part of it by hitting that subscribe button. It would really mean a lot to me. Till then, you can watch my other video where I exposed Mama Guy completely. So, see you in that video, or in the next one. Till then, take care and be safe. This is Ignacanto signing off. Peace.